Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And on this episode, we will be talking about one of the prime time games this weekend in the NFL. That would be the Jacksonville Jaguars as they host the Baltimore Ravens Sunday night under the lights in Jacksonville, Florida. I don't think anyone really thought they would see a late night game in Jacksonville, Florida at this point a couple years ago. But here we are, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Definitely one of the best teams in the AFC. So we'll definitely get into that. But first, I do have to mention, I want to say, of course, thank you to one of my sponsors. That would be Manscaped. Manscaped.com. Of course, you get 20% off Manscaped plus free shipping with the promo code AFC South. Again, 20% off manscaped.com. Anything you want on there, plus free shipping with the promo code AFC South. I know it's Christmas time. It's a few days away. You better go ahead and get that run, get that stuff, get it to your house, present it to your loved one, whoever you want to present it to. Hey, the gifts from me to you, 20% off, free shipping with the promo code AFC South. Of course, I do have a special guest. I did not announce my special guest yet. That is totally on me. But my special guest is someone that definitely knows her sports. She is right there in the thick of it, whether it be basketball season, football season. She has Double Take Sports, where she brings things from a slightly different perspective. And she also, Bowie TV, Baltimore Ravens reporter. Let's see. I know I'm probably missing some accolades too, but Miss Carita Parks, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And, this week is very special. We'll get into why that's very special a little later in the show. But, before we kind of get into talking about the Ravens versus the Jaguars, I have to talk about the Get Off Your Chest segment, which ironically is from your name, the DC, the Baltimore, the Virginia area, all up in that area right there, because we had a little shakeup happen. The Washington Wizards and all the owner Ted Leonosis announces that the team will be moving from DC. This is the Capitals and the Wizards, from DC to across the Potomac to Northern Virginia. Now, this isn't happening right now, but it will eventually happen, and it probably happen pretty quickly. I suspect probably in a couple years at the most. But they're going to build a new state-of-the-art practice facility. Monumental Sports, which is the entertainment company that owns the Wizards, will be having a main office there. All those different things will be there in state-of-the-art, and they are leaving DC. Now, this sounds great in terms of the facilities and all those different things and whatever it's bringing to Northern Virginia. Sounds great there. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of that, I look at DC, another team leaving the DC area. Now, we know, now that's known, the team is known as Commanders left the DC area where they are now. And, of course, that stadium is having a few issues. But to me, I kind of just feel like it's strange when a team calls itself Washington, but they don't live anywhere. Nothing is really housed there. Now, I know plenty could probably say that about the San Francisco 49ers. They live in their home is now in Santa Clara. But with this team in particular, now you have no teams that are actually really in DC in terms of football and basketball. I would say, no, I'll take that back. WNBA. They're there still. But other than that, you don't have –
Nationals are there still too.
What's that?
The Washington Nationals are still there.
Right. But, yeah, in terms of, football and basketball, the Mystics are pretty much going to be it right now. So, to me, you have a commuting city. Basically, you use the train and public transportation a lot. When I went to D.C., I loved it because you can get around with public transportation. And you made it easier to get to where the Wizards play. Now, with this, them moving to Northern Virginia, it doesn't make it easier for their fans or what for their fans to actually get to the games. They're going to have to move a little more, travel a little bit differently. And to me, I feel bad for those fans that actually have been there going to these games, even though the team hasn't been as successful as they would like them to be. I just feel bad for them and what they're basically getting. And if this team ends up being successful, it's going to be in North Virginia as opposed to being DC, where all those fans that commuted to those games and were able to see them and love on them and boo them when they were mad and things like that, they won't be able, that percentage of those fans won't be able to do so as much anymore. And I just feel bad about that. I just have to kind of express that. I know it's better facilities, but it just feels weird that they won't be in DC anymore soon. I mean, Carita, did you have any thoughts when you heard the news?
I mean, it definitely feels weird. I think DC sports belongs in DC. DC is also a very unique place because it is hugged by Maryland and Virginia. So, in the grand scheme of things, where they are proposing moving this is really only a few miles away. Actually, it's just a few miles away, probably about 15-20 minutes when it comes to timing, so from that perspective, it's really not that far. It's just that they're moving the team out of DC, and that's definitely a blow to DC. The economy, just like you said, they've had teams leave. So for me, it makes sense to stay in DC. Do I think it will impact the fans? Yeah, to a certain extent, but the Washington Commanders Stadium is in Maryland, and if they're winning, well, actually, it's been sold out this season, even though they haven't been winning. So fans have still found their way over to the Commander Stadium, which is actually further away. So, I mean, I think fans will still support the team. It's just going to be a huge change. The Metro will go out there. It just depends on what lines, but I can't imagine if they're making such a huge move that they wouldn't have all of the Metro lines go out there. I just think the biggest situation is it's a blow to DC. It's a blow to DC fans. DC sports belong in DC, but I do still think that once the dust settles, you'll still see fans get out there. I mean, like I said, there'll be Metro access. They'll drive. They say there'll be more parking and things like that. But it's different, and it's different.
Yeah, definitely different. It's going to have a different feel about it as well. But, I still would say it wouldn't surprise me if the Commanders end up coming back to DC. But, of course, that's either here or there at this point. And, we're not even a full year through the ownership of the new ownership with the Commanders. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I just
they definitely have more leverage in negotiations because DC is losing a team. So, I mean, they've always wanted the Commanders to come back, but now the Commanders may be able to get more than they were able to get when DC still felt like they had the Wizards and the Capitals. So, might see the Commanders back in DC. I do actually like that location where they used to be.
Gotcha. Now we do have the Not Bland show actually commenting. It says it's definitely weird, but honestly, the area is so big that it all kind of runs together. I think that the fans will come out and support. It's just sad that the team won't stay in DC. Definitely.
More of an emotional thing. But this is the way I guess sports teams are going, where they want sports complexes. And he's getting a 70-acre plot of land. There's no way you can get that in DC. Like, you're not going to get 70 acres in DC. So if he's trying to build something that huge, you got to move out of DC. But so it comes down to a business decision for Monumental Sports. Definitely not the best for fans, but I do agree. Fans are going to still find their ways to the game.
Okay. All right. We kind of, I had to get that one off my chest a little bit. I do feel a little way, even though I'm not even from DC. I've been there to visit. I do love visiting DC. I do like trains, but of course we got to get out of talking DC and Maryland and Virginia. We got to go to the team that is actually the standard bearer in that area, that would be the Baltimore Ravens. Hey, Washington Commanders fans, if you're hearing, I'm sorry, but you just got to state the truth. They are the standard bearer team in that area right now. Now, the Baltimore Ravens, of course, before we get into, of course, the Jags game, I do want to talk about this last game against the Rams, 37-31 thriller. I mean, the defense, they've only given up like, 17 points a game, a little under 17 points a game.
Yeah.
And in this game, it just seemed like the Rams were doing whatever they really kind of wanted. Some of that's, of course, Kyle Hamilton, their most versatile defensive player, got hurt. But was this more like a blip on the radar screen, or is this more something, to have a little bit more concern about because of, how many points the Rams put up?
I don't think it's something to have long-term concern about. It was definitely concerning in that game, but also have to consider they were coming off of a bye week, and I was a little concerned how they would be after a bye week, just because they had so much momentum going into the bye week. So I think it was a little bit of rust. Those guys, they really, on defense, they hold themselves accountable. They don't like when other teams score a lot of touchdowns on them. So I feel very confident that they're going to adjust for the Jaguars game. Now, if we see the same performance in the Jaguars game, I might have to get concerned. But I do think it was just a combination of things coming off of the bye week, finding their groove again. Kyle Hamilton getting hurt is a little bit more difficult to make those in-game adjustments. So I think it was just a combination of things. I mean, we've seen the defense, they played well most of the season, but they've had their moments here and there where their performance hasn't been like what they want it to be.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, the energy in that building, it just seems a little different this year. Of course, out goes Greg Roman, in comes the new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken from Georgia, University of Georgia, that is. What can you just say about the energy in that building? I know you've been there kind of, covering the team, talking to players, observing practices. What can you just say about the energy there, just the difference, or just the energy? I know you covered the Commanders at one point in time as well, but what can you just say just about the energy there itself at that building?
When you say the energy is different, what do you mean?
Meaning, it just looks like, offensively, the energy just looks a little different than it did under Greg Roman. Under Greg Roman, you saw a little bit of consternation, a little bit of frustration at times, and now it seems like a little bit more free flowing, a little bit more excitement, a little bit more of energy offensively as opposed to what it was last year.
Well, I think you have to think about the changes in the offenses too. So not just the offensive coordinator. I mean, they added a lot of free agents in the offseason. So Lamar has more weapons. They drafted Zay Flowers. They signed Odell Beckham Jr. They signed Nelson Aguilar. They got Rashad Bateman back, who had a season-ending foot injury. So you have all those guys back. They've been fairly healthy this year. Well, the first half of the season was a little shaky, but for the most part, they've been able to hold the health together. I mean, last year you also had Lamar, all the talk about his contract and was he getting a contract. So I think it's more of, you got new pieces on the team. You got Lamar Jackson. He's comfortable. He has his contract. He doesn't have to think about that. He doesn't have to worry about that. And then you have Todd Monken, who's bringing in a new system. So I think it's a combination of things. But from an energy level, yeah, I mean, the guys, especially now, I mean, they've been very focused on getting to the postseason, and now they're in that stretch where they really control their own destiny. So they're focused, they're excited, but they know that they have business to take care of. So I think it just comes down to a combination of things as far as the energy is concerned.
Gotcha. So, yeah, definitely. I just, just had a few thoughts there. I just wanted to kind of, go over. But, as far as the Baltimore Ravens season, they are one of the best teams in the NFL. Someone argued that I don't think anybody's going to argue the best team in the NFL right now because of a particular team out west, but that's another story for another day. But I will say this. There is an argument about Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson has 21 total touchdowns, 16 of those passing. He has 6 interceptions. He's played good football this season, but it just seems like he's kind of getting looked over a little bit, when it comes to the MVP talk or the best quarterbacks in the NFL, because he doesn't have the super gaudy numbers, or he just does things that equate to winning. Do you think that's kind of, you know, a reason why he's probably being looked over a lot in terms of the MVP race and just being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, among other things?
Well, he's actually been in the MVP conversation. We just asked him about that yesterday when he talked about being in the MVP conversation. So, he is in that conversation. He is one of the better quarterbacks in the league right now. He just finished that game with versus the Rams with over 300 yards passing. He doesn't pass over 300 yards every game, but you also have to look at the Ravens offense and how they run their offense. Sometimes they're heavy on the passing, like in the Rams game, they were heavier on the passing than I imagined, especially with the weather. I thought they'd use the run game more, but they are a team that leans a lot on their run game. Then Lamar Jackson, he's able to run. So he doesn't pass for 300 yards every game. So you're not going to always see those numbers. But, I think as far as Lamar is concerned, he doesn't really care if he's overlooked. He does get overlooked. I don't even know if I'd say he gets overlooked. I just think he gets criticized more than some other quarterbacks for how he plays his game. But he's managing that offense. They have a ton of respect for him in that room on both sides of the ball. And every time we ask him a question about either him being overlooked or the team being overlooked, he says, I don't care. I like to fly under the radar so people don't necessarily expect us. So he don't really care about that. But I do agree that sometimes he can be, I feel, less overlooked and just more criticized.
Yeah, I definitely could say that one. The reason why I was saying more overlooked is because it seemed like now people went from talking about Jalen Hurts to talking about Dak as the quarterback to be the MVP, and I was like, okay, I know Lamar is having a good season. They just, did they really just kind of look over his season? That's where my mind was kind of going when saying that. But of course, another thing I have to address: the Ravens and this roller coaster they've been on. Now they've had some dominating wins. I remember watching the Lions game where they won 38-6 and just blew the Lions off the field. But they've also had some losses that make you scratch your head, like the Baltimore loss against Pittsburgh Steelers earlier in the season. That made me scratch my head a little bit. And then the Colts loss at home, 22-19. And it just, some of these losses make you scratch your head, but then they have those games, they come out and they just dominate, and you're like, okay, is this really them? So, what are your thoughts on this peaks and valleys that this team is having this year? It's kind of mind-boggling to me watching it and, just seeing it in real time.
Well, they only have 3 losses. So the 3 losses that have been mind-boggling is only 3 out of they're 10-3. So they've had 10 wins as well. The 2 losses against Indy and the Steelers, that was in the beginning of the season. And I do feel like it was taking them some time to figure things out. That's when they had way more injuries, which was pretty ironic, but their injury list was pretty lengthy in the beginning of the season. So I think some of that was the Steelers loss. I feel like of all that loss in particular, like the wide receivers were not holding onto the ball. There was a lot going on in that game. So I think the losses in the beginning had to do more with them kind of trying to figure out their chemistry, especially on offense. But the wins that they've had, yeah, they've been up and down. There's some, like you said, when they dominate teams, and then some where they're playing close, and then like with the Rams, they go into overtime. But I think what you have to take away from that is the Ravens in each of those 10 games, no matter how wild it's been or how wide open it's been, they found a way to win. And that's what I've been saying. Like, they have found a way to win. And I think that that's going to come into play these last couple games of the season. They've had some really gritty wins. And we're probably going to see that over the next couple of weeks. So for me, I think that it's been a bit of a lesson learned for them, and probably also a confidence booster, because the Rams game looked like it was hanging in the balance. And then Tylan Wallace, who has not returned a punt in his NFL career, he's with the wide receivers, but he doesn't get playing time. He comes out of nowhere and he returns a punt for 76 yards. So we've just seen different guys step up in different situations, and they've just found a way to win.
All right, all right. Yeah, the Ravens have definitely found a way to win and a way to the top of the AFC South. But they will be facing an opponent that is trying to find their way to consistently stay at the top of the AFC. And of course, that would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to talk about this game, Sunday Night Football, Ravens versus Jaguars, when we come back from commercial break. You're watching Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. And when we left off going to commercial break, we were talking about this great matchup, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Baltimore Ravens. Man, wow, I don't think Jacksonville has had a game this hype since the end of last season, where they were coming back to win the AFC South while the Tennessee Titans were going down. The Jacksonville Jaguars were going up. Yeah. And, of course, they won the game, won the division, went to the playoffs, had one of the more crazy wins in the playoffs before finally losing to the Kansas City Chiefs, who won the title. But, wow, this game here. First, this game is going to be an interesting game for you, I know, because you do cover the Baltimore Ravens, but where is that place that you are from?
That would be Jacksonville, Florida, aka Duval.
Oh boy. So I've got to ask, what are the emotions going into this game, being that you cover the Baltimore Ravens, but you are from Jacksonville, Florida?
Well, it's interesting because I covered the Commanders and the Jaguars, and it felt different. I'm gonna be neutral, I'm professional. I'm there to do a job, so definitely gonna be neutral. But it feels a little different because there's so much more at stake in this game for the Jaguars and for the Ravens. So I think this one will be a little bit more tense, but I'll kind of like make the best team win. However, I will say the better the Ravens do, the better that is for me, since I cover the team.
There you go. You gave the very diplomatic answer. I know. But but let's get into the game a little bit. Before the season, I said the Jaguars had the potential to score 30 points per game. Mm-hmm. They haven't quite got to that. It's 24 points a game. So, they're 6 points off what I thought. But they are still a dangerous offense. I mean, they're without Christian Kirk, who has been their most consistent wide receiver this year. But they still do have Calvin Ridley. They still have Zay Jones, a.k.a. Bruce Leroy. They do have Evan Ingram. Now, for those that don't catch the Zay Jones, Bruce Leroy reference, just watch Barry Gordon's Last Dragon. If you don't know what that is, just Google it. You'll see what I'm talking about. But they do have all these weapons, and then they also have Travis Etienne. So with all these different weapons, what do you think the level of concern is for the Ravens when going against this team, especially at home?
Well, I know that they don't take them lightly. I mean, lightly, excuse me. They don't take them lightly. Um, because they do know that the Jaguars offense is definitely a concern. And even with Trevor Lawrence, even though he's coming off the high ankle sprain, just the fact that he is playing after just being hurt 2 weeks ago, I mean, that shows a level of toughness. So this defense, they also remember, particularly linebacker Patrick Queen, last year when they let the Jaguars come back and win that game against them. And that kind of sparked their little run into the playoffs. So they want to redeem themselves and not allow the same thing to happen. But it's not going to be easy, especially because at this point, the Jaguars have lost 2 games in a row, I believe. 2 games in a row. So you know that they're trying to get back on track as well. So it's gonna be a dogfight, I tend to believe.
Yeah, definitely going to be a dogfight, and the Jaguars were in a dogfight, of course, the previous week with the Cleveland Browns, and that surely didn't go very well. But of course, speaking of people being there and things not going very well, Walker Little and Ezra Cleveland were actually back in practice this week, and that's huge for the Jacksonville Jaguars because they do have some injuries up front. Now, with those guys being back potentially for this game, going against this Ravens front that, it's a lot of guys, it's a collective front of guys that have made things happen. Like Jadeveon Clowney, for example, he's a guy that comes in there and just gives us all.
Let's talk about Jadeveon Clowney, though. Last show, you was like, you didn't think he was going to really show up.
I surely didn't. I surely did not think he would. So he has proven me wrong. He definitely has. But what I can say is they do have strength in numbers when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm wondering what they are what they are seeing in this Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line and what they can kind of take advantage of there with the strength in numbers. I'm just kind of thinking about, are they kind of salivating looking at this Jaguars offensive line kind of beat up?
It's kind of interesting because the offensive line in particular, the Jaguars offensive line in particular, hasn't necessarily come up. But I think no matter who the opponent is, that defense is always salivating. But like you said, they have a very deep and talented defensive front. I mean, you got Justin Madubuike, who has 10 sacks on the season already. Jadeveon Clowney, as we talked about, he's been playing very well. Odafe Oweh is up there. Then you got Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith. I mean, it's a bunch of a beast on that Ravens defense, but also particularly that defensive line. So with the Jaguars offensive line being a little bit beat up, I mean, naturally they're going to take advantage of that as much as they can. So I think that we'll see that come into play on Sunday for sure.
Another guy you didn't mention that is a veteran, that would be Kyle Van Noy. He's actually done a few things as well.
Yes. How could I forget Kyle Van Noy? There's so many of them. I'm just like, but yeah, Kyle Van Noy. But in all honesty, I mean, we gotta think he came literally, like they always joke about it and say, this guy just came off the couch and started playing for us. But I mean, he has been an immediate threat on the Ravens defensive line. I mean, that defense has a lot going for them. And I'm not saying that just specifically because I cover the team. I've been saying that all season. And they do have their, we talked about that, their ups and downs sometimes in the games. But overall, I mean, they have been a top defense in this league.
Yeah, definitely. Now,
it will be a huge challenge for the Jaguars offensive line.
Right. And well, I was going to talk about Jadeveon Clowney, but you kind of already mentioned him, so I got to show him his props. He's doing his thing. I'll give him his props. Of course, we're not going to talk about the old days in the AFC South. We're not going to talk about those.
But to be fair, if you were going if you were going based off history, then I think a lot of people came into the season who have seen his career unfold thinking the same thing, but he's been able to find his way so far this season.
He has. Now, we're going to flip it over to the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens. Mm-hmm. That would be Mr. Lamar Jackson. He's looking at a defense that is 31st in pass defense. Now, one person I know that's probably practicing in the mirror this week, that'd be Odell Beckham Jr. He's probably going to do Smooth Criminal this time. I mean, he's done every Michael Jackson dance in the end zone I can think of. So, I mean, he may get a chance to do a couple of them in this game. I mean, Lamar Jackson's got to be licking his chops, right? Just looking at this defense and what Joe Flacco, who 2 or 3 weeks ago was laying on his couch, got up and did against them. 311 yards. 311 yards.
Yeah. Well, so definitely I think it's going to be a good offensive game for the Ravens. And I say that because I was thinking about the Jacksonville secondary, which is fairly depleted. So, this is an opportunity. They've been trying to get the receivers more consistent game by game. So I do think that this is going to be a potentially big game for the receivers, including the tight ends. Got to think about Zay Flowers, who had towards the end of the Rams game, had a pretty two big plays. Then Odell Beckham Jr., his first couple games, he had no touchdowns. Like the first half of the season, he didn't have any touchdowns. But in the last 3 games, he's turned up, and this is what they brought him in for this time of the year and going into playoffs. So I definitely think it's going to be a big game for the receivers. But I mean, I wouldn't count out the run game either. The running backs have had some big games too. So I think we're going to see. And I'm not implying that the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars defense is going to play a little better because there's been so much conversation this week from the Jaguars about how the defense didn't play well last week and the lack of communication. So I expect them to play better this week. So I think that is going to be a factor, but I do believe that the Ravens have a lot of weapons that can exploit the Jaguars defense.
Yeah, can I just please? I just want to see him try to do the lean one time. Odell Beckham when he scored. Do the lean in the Smooth Criminal video. I mean, it would be funny.
You never know what Odell Beckham Jr. is going to do. He has like all kinds of touchdown celebrations in his back pocket. So we'll see what he pulls out if he gets that touchdown.
He did the with the Rock My World video last time. I was like, yes, come on with it. But give me the old school. Give me an old school one. I want to see an old school dance. So I'd love to see him do Remember the Time in the end zone. I'd love to see him do that one too.
I feel like he probably will do something that's not Michael Jackson this time, though. He likes to like change it up.
I don't know. I like the theme of Michael Jackson. So, he is the king of pop, and he's trying to be the king of the NFL in terms of winning a championship. So, kind of a little comparison right there.
We shall see on the Odell Beckham touchdown celebration watch.
Right. Now, just one last thing I want to talk about, and that is Josh Allen. Josh Allen has been a bad boy for the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. He's going into a contract year.
You didn't think he was going to be a bad boy either.
I did not. I did not.
On a lot of people.
I did not think he would. I thought he would be a guy that would get a lot of pressures, but not a lot of actual sacks. Because over the years, he's gotten a lot of pressures, but just not completed the job. This year, he's completing the job. And it's ironic, of course, obviously it's a contract year, so he's finally completing the job in the contract year.
Right.
But that's another story for another day. But, of course, there's no one. Right. Now, there's no one that even has half of his total of sacks. He has 13 for the season. no one has half of what he has on this team. So to me, I mean, would I be crazy to say that the Baltimore Ravens probably going to focus more of their attention in the pass game on Josh Allen and getting him blocked up than they would worry about Trayvon Walker on the other side?
Yeah, so that's funny because I actually asked Coach Harbaugh. He talked yesterday. I'm getting my days all mixed up, but he talked yesterday, and I asked him specifically about Josh Allen because he's having one of his better seasons, rushing the passer, getting sacks. And, Coach Harbaugh acknowledged that Josh Allen is a guy that they're going to have to account for on every single play. But then he didn't say Trayvon Walker by name, but he mentioned the position, so I knew who he was talking about. Then he went on to Trayvon Walker and just complimented the entire defensive front. But yes, I do think we're going to see them concentrate a lot of their energy on Josh Allen because he's the biggest threat.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to me, I don't know. I know we're probably. I know this isn't a show about Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson, but it seems like Aiden Hutchinson is the better in terms of pass rusher, and it seems like Trayvon Walker is better in the run game. So both of them are kind of opposite. Both of them are kind of what the other team needs in terms of Jacksonville. He's kind of like the pass rusher that they need, opposite of Josh Allen. Aiden Hutchinson is, and in Detroit, they need more people to stop the run and things like that, be more physical up front, and they could have used Trayvon Walker for that. So it's quite interesting when I look at those little dynamics there. And, people bring up the numbers and the stats, but they don't really get into the actual play, which the play dictates that probably one would have been better in the other place than the other, to me.
Yeah, well, hindsight is 2020, as they say.
Right. And then
Jacksonville has
oh
Trayvon for a long time, so they got to figure that one out.
Yep. And who knows? You'll come back in maybe a year or so and tell me, hey, you remember all that stuff you was talking about Trayvon Walker? He's got 12 sacks.
I just think it's funny, the two guys in particular. But I get it.
You got me. I already know every time you come on the show, you're going to set me straight on something. I already know. But we have reached towards the end of the show. I definitely am looking forward to an exciting game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Baltimore Ravens. But, of course, we have another game here. It's called 5 Questions, 2 Answers, and 1 Choice. Okay. It could be anything, so get ready. Are you ready, Carita?
Ready as I'm going to get.
All right. Well, here we go. First question. You have 742 yards with 4 games to go for Calvin Ridley. Does he get to 1,000 yards receiving? Yes or no?
Just for the regular season?
Yes.
Ooh. I'm going to go with no. I think that's going to be a heavy lift with just a few games left.
Yeah, about 4 games, about 250 yards. So about 60 yards, or is it, I don't know. My math might be funny, but anyway, he's about 70 yards a game, about 70 or 60 some odd yards a game. So it'd be interesting to see if he can do so. But he's been a little bit inconsistent.
With Christian Kirk out, maybe that'll change. But I'm gonna say no for now.
Mm-hmm. But remember though, he does see the Titans one more time, and he did have a really good game against them last time. Yeah. Now we're gonna go to Rick Ross real quick, and then I think Rick Ross seems to be brought up a lot on this show because I definitely like listening to Rick Ross music. But anyway, that's another story for another day. Okay, we got 2 songs, Rick Ross. We got Ashton Martin music, chorus featuring Chrisette Michele and Drake, or we got Diced Pineapples with Drake and Wale on there. Which song are you taking between those 2?
I'll go with Aston Martin music.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Between the 2. Well, you said that at first that was not going to be my pick, but then between the 2, that's my pick.
Okay. All right. Well, I do like the song with it. I don't know. It's always an interesting song when you got Drake on something. He's always on something. Funny thing is he's on both of these tracks I mentioned But
Yeah.
anyway, all right. Now, which one do you enjoy covering more? That would be the Washington Wizards or the Washington Mystics.
Which one do I enjoy covering more? That's tough because I like both for different reasons. So it's kind of
Mhm.
hard to say which one I like better. Um, but I guess I have to choose, right?
Yeah, they leave it to me. They bring the tough questions, right?
Well, if I have to choose, I'm not going to say that I enjoy one more than the other because, in all honesty, there's different reasons why I like them both. But I will say the Washington Mystics provided my first championship experience with a team because they won the championship in 20 the WNBA championship in 2019 and I covered that season. So I had the opportunity to, see that trophy ceremony, that locker room celebration with the champagne and just all the ins and outs that goes with a team winning a championship. So from that perspective, I'll pick the Mystics just because they've given me that experience.
Okay. All right. All right.
Sports,
Now, what's that?
and it's women's sports, gotta show some love to the women.
Right. 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 Now we're gonna go to a artist that actually is up there in that area of the country, and people know
Okay.
him pretty well. That'd be Wale. We're gonna go with Lotus Flower Bomb featuring Miguel, or the Matrimony song, which featured Usher. Which song are you taking?
I'm gonna take Lotus Flower Bomb on this one.
Oh, you're not going with Usher? I am shocked.
I like Usher. I love the Usher song, but that doesn't mean that I like every song Usher hop on. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like that song, but I had to choose one.
Okay. All right. All right. So,
I like Miguel a lot too, though.
gotcha, gotcha. Well, I got some jokes there, but I ain't gonna get them jokes off today. Now the last one, Navy yards or Potomac yards. Which yard are you taking that you like the most?
Hmm.
Now, for those that don't know, Navy Yard is in DC and Potomac is in Virginia. So there you go.
Well, for now, I would say Navy Yard because the Navy Yard has like the bars and the restaurants and Nats Stadium and just there's a lot going on in Navy Yard. I used to live by Potomac Yard, so I like Potomac Yard, but right now it's still very residential feel. So,
Mhm.
but I like Navy Yard because you got some things popping over there.
Okay, all right. Well, I have been in Navy Yard, and I definitely did enjoy myself there when I was in DC. But of course, we have reached the end. 5 questions, 2 answers, and one choice. You are off the hot seat, Carita. It's over.
I think I did pretty good.
Yeah, well, we're gonna let the listeners settle all that. But anyway, but I want to thank you for coming on again. It's always a pleasure when you come on. Of course, we got to get you on and talk about PR stuff. That'll probably be around the draft and things like that. For those that don't know, Carita is definitely a PR wizard. We ain't gonna say that the pun was intended, but but she definitely does know her PR backwards, forwards,
I
and whatever
do.
which way you can think of. There you go. So
Yes, yes.
I'm going to give the floor to you. Tell everyone where they can find you on social media and also what all things that you are working on.
Whew, okay, here we go. You
Let me
can
get my
find
pen ready. Hold on, hold on. Let me get my pen ready so I can write some of this stuff down.
well, you can
Nah.
find me on social media at Carita C Parts. That's where I drop everything that I'm doing. So that's really a good follow there. But you can also find me on all social media platforms at DBL Take Sports. That's Double Take Sports. That's my sports company. Also, dbltakesports.com for the actual content and articles. So make sure you visit the website. Let's see, Bowie TV reporter for the Baltimore Ravens. So make sure you follow at Bowie TV Sports. I also dibble and dabble in writing for Inside the Wizards. So you can find me there as well. And then we talked about Parks PR. So make sure you follow Parks PR at Parks PR. And I think I covered everything.
No, you really didn't. You missed one. You know why you missed one? Because you said Inside Wizards. No. We ain't going to just say Inside Wizards.
Oh.
That is Sports Illustrated, ma'am.
Yes,
we will say Sports Illustrated on here.
Inside the Wizards. That is a fact. You are right. Could not leave that out.
There we go. Now we complete. Yeah. But for those that are wondering, of course, I am the host of the show. My name is Mike Patton. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton82. That's MikePatton 82. You can find me on Threads and on Instagram at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. And also you can find Touring the AFC South on YouTube. You can find it on all your listening platforms as well, like iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, let's see, Spotify, you name it, we are there. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South. We're out. Peace.